Becky's Beauty School channel. I'm Becky, for those that don't know who I am. I'm a waxing specialist and I'm also a beauty educator. Today we are obviously still in lockdown, so you'll have to excuse the fact that I'm not in the salon, but we're just going to go over about the prepping of our skin before we wax. And I'm just using my daughter's arm as an example for this video. So before we start any of our waxing, we need to make sure that we use a really good pre-wax cleansing spray, because we want to make sure that we get any of the dirt, the oils, the natural greases that we have on our skin, any makeup and any residue that is left on there. And why are we cleaning it? Because we want to make sure that when we put our wax on, that we haven't got a barrier that is stopping the wax to grip onto any of the hairs that we want to get hold of. So the pre-wax cleanser that I've been using recently is a Hive one, and this is a coconut and lime one. It's absolutely really lovely, refreshing smell, and a lot of people have commented on the smell. And the reason I mention the smell is because it's actually quite a nice thing. It's nice and relaxing to have a nice smell that goes onto the skin, and before anyone's even started waxing, they're the first to comment on about how refreshing it is. So what you want to do is get yourself some cotton wool, lightly spray your cotton wool, and we want to just go down through the skin, just giving it a nice cleanse before we start. Now, we don't want to soak the skin, we don't want to drench it. We just want to give it a nice cleanse and then leave it a couple of seconds for the air to just dry it off so it's nice and dry to start. Now, for a lot of areas, that would be enough before we do anything else. But there are a couple of areas that we may need to add some extra things in that will be helpful for our wax to obviously sit on the skin. So, for example, when it comes to the leg area, which is a little bit more prone to obviously drier skin, especially on the knees, you might find that if you do come across something like that, just using like an after wax oil, like something that will just obviously stop the dry skin for gripping on to the wax, and then the wax not being able to remove from that dry skin. Now, as you can see, I've used 1 or 2 drops, a small amount, and if you're working in the industry, you should have gloves on, and you would be rubbing that into your gloves. And the reason I say 1 or 2 drops and rubbing it in, as you can see, there's a slight shine there. It's not to drench the skin in oil. We don't want the oil to be there as a barrier, but what we do want is just to obviously just stop that dry skin from sucking onto the wax and getting stuck on there. So it's just really helpful for areas that are a little bit dry, and just to rub it on. Now, if you found you did put a bit too much oil on, just get some couch roll or some tissue and just blot the skin to get off any of the residue that is sitting on top before you put the wax on. Now, in other areas, you might find that actually using a talc would be more helpful. Now, when I say other areas, I'm talking about your underarms or your bikini area, because these are areas that we sweat and there's a lot more moisture there. So as you can see, I'm just using a Johnson's talc powder. And I would do a little bit of talc on the skin like this, and then I wouldn't leave it too thick sitting on there, because if we put our wax at the top, it will cause a paste with the thickness of the talc. So you just need to make sure you rub it in, and then you get a nice matte sort of feel across the skin, and that would then suck up any of the moisture, and the skin is then ready to then wax. So there would only be the underarms and the bikini area that I would use that. Now, what I will mention is that in areas of the world such as America, I am going to just briefly go over the fact that I know that talcum powder, there are many lawsuits against it, as they think there is a link obviously with cancers, and I know America is one of the areas that they don't like using talcum powder, and that's totally fine. I don't have an opinion on the situation. I'm just here to tell you that today, obviously in the UK, there isn't an issue with using obviously like a Johnson's powder, if that's what you're happy to use. But if you are someone that wants to avoid talc free, there are plenty of talc free powders that will do exactly the same as what this does, and is obviously a lot more safer if you're somebody that does feel concerned about talcum powder. So Burt's Bees is an organic range. It has dusting powder that's harm-free and easy to use. You might pay a little bit more money for it, but definitely worth one to look at. There's also FemFresh, which is a brand which, the reason I mention FemFresh, if you're putting it on the bikini area, they're a brand that obviously are designed for the intimate area, and you might actually find that their dusting powder is also a good one to use as well, which is talc-free. Check Amazon, there's absolutely loads on there. So there's loads of different brands, and you'll probably find something wherever you are in the world that will be just as helpful to use on them areas if you do want to avoid the talc. Now, once you have obviously prepped the skin and it's ready to use, then you're able to then put your wax on. Now, just as a demonstration, it's not about me removing any hair right now. I just want to show you why it's important to make sure that you are prepping the skin beforehand. And the best example I can do is just demonstrating what the wax would do if it was on an area of the skin that had too much moisture there. So by using a little bit of hot or hard wax, I'm just going to grab a tiny bit now. Now, if we pop the wax onto the skin, and as you can see, I've just applied a little bit of hot or hard wax there. And it goes onto the skin lovely without any moisture or anything there that gets in the way of that wax sitting nicely onto the skin. So once it's set, we're able to then obviously remove the wax, nice and easy, with no issues at all. But if there was obviously then moisture on that skin area, and I'm just going to lightly put a bit of pre-wax cleanser. Now, if we were doing, say, the underarms or the bikini and it was really sweaty, even on men's backs or chests, when obviously a male client gets a bit hot and sweatier in them areas, you might find that they'll have like a moisture similar to this over the skin. If we were then to make sure we then put the wax on over the top of that without prepping our skin beforehand, you'll see how the wax doesn't sit on the skin, it actually glides over the sweat, and you will find that this will then become an issue for you to obviously then wax. So this is why the talcum powder or the dusting powder, if you choose to use that, is definitely really helpful for them areas, and that's one of the reasons behind why we do it. So that's giving you a demonstration of why we make sure we prep our skin properly before we wax. Also just want to go over the fact that Perron rigot, the Cerapearl range, they do some amazing products as well. I really recommend this brand. There's hundreds of brands out there, there's different products out there that you can obviously go and have a look at. Like I've mentioned in this video, I've used Hive. The oil that I used just beforehand was an S Pro one. So there's lots of different brands out there that you can use, and a lot of them are just as good as each other. But with this brand, I find it, yes, it is a teeny little bit more pricey for those that are in the industry and want a good quality brand to use, but I love their products, and I find they're one of the best to use. The refreshing gel is a product that I use after waxing on the eyebrows, and I find it's a little bit goes a long way actually. So it's a good product. Even though it's a little bit more pricier, it goes a long way. They also do a beautiful jasmine oil, which my clients comment on all the time and say how much they love, and they do a lovely anti-bac pre-cleansing spray as well, which is really good to get rid of any of the germs and prep your skin beforehand too. And they come in really nice big large bottles, so if you're in the industry and you want to get a nice big amount and use a good quality brand, then obviously I recommend these guys. So hopefully that's helped you today, and it's given you some helpful tips of how to prep the skin and what products that you will need, especially if you're home waxing right now due to lockdown. You will need to get yourself some hopefully some good little bits out there that maybe aren't as pricey, but like the Hive, which is a good one to use. So definitely have a look about, make sure what deals you can get online. Don't get ripped off by just buying the first thing you see. Feel free to give us your comments. Let me know what products you've used, what brands that you enjoy, maybe your views maybe on the talc and the talc 3 as well. It's nice to hear what other people's views are on that. Thank you to those that already have subscribed to my channel. If you haven't, you know what to do. Go and subscribe, hit the notification bell to be updated with more videos to come. Peace and love, guys. Good luck with your waxing.